Welcome to Dr Joe Unplugged. This podcast contains general information and is not in any way medical advice. Engaging in moderate to intense physical activity for as little as 10 minutes daily for 5 times a week appears to reduce the risk of generalized anxiety disorder in older adults. That's a quote from an article on Medscape today from 12 January 2024. They studied 7,500 odd participants over a period of time, roughly 50-50, women 55%, mean age 65. I think it's important with these studies that we do know who's involved. Is it applicable more broadly? I think in a case like this, we can certainly say that it applies to males and females. I think it's probably fair to say that you don't have to have an age of 65 to benefit. Compared with the lowest physical activity participants with the highest physical activity, there was a 23% lower chance of generalized anxiety, and those with moderate physical activity had 19% lower odds. Now, one thing that's very important to say here, and this is be something that I'll be commenting on often when we're talking about studies, relative and absolute reduction are not the same. So if you have a 5% chance of getting condition X and you do some intervention and your chance of getting it is now 4%, that will be presented as a 20% reduction in risk. From 5 to 4, that's 1/5, that's 20%. But in absolute terms, your risk has gone from 5% to 4%. Now, the lower the initial odds, the more important that is. If you have a 0.5% chance of having a heart attack in the next 5 years and some intervention reduces your chances of that by 50%, you'll think, wow, 50%, that's really good. In reality, your chances have gone from 0.5% to 0.25%. Again, I'm just plucking those numbers from the air for an example. So when it's saying a 23% reduction, what they're not telling us is from what to what. However, what we do know, and this study builds on rather than makes the case, is that physical exercise is very, very good for our mental health. We know from previous work that people who do regular exercise are less likely to suffer from depression, they're less likely to suffer from anxiety, they're less likely to suffer the effects of stress. Not a guarantee. It's not saying that if you exercise that you cannot get stressed or anxious or depressed. We also know that for people who do have stress or depression or anxiety, that physical activity and exercise can be part of their lifestyle approach to it, not necessarily mutually exclusive with other treatments, and again, not saying that there may not be a role for medications in certain cases for various people. But what we do know is that being physically active is very, very good, not only for our physical health, and that we could be subject for a whole nother talk or 5, but very good for our mental health. And we also sleep better when we do some regular exercise. Now, people will often say, I don't have the time to do exercise. Each and every one of us has 24 hours in every day available to us. We're going to spend a certain number of those asleep, somewhere between 7 and 8 hours. We're going to spend a certain number of those probably at work. For a lot of people, we may have family and other commitments. But we can generally find 10 minutes 5 days a week. Now, you'll sometimes hear these campaigns saying find 30. Great. If you can find 30 minutes of 4 or 5 times a week to do some exercise, go for it. I absolutely say that's a good idea. But it doesn't mean that less than that isn't useful. Any amount of exercise that you do is going to be better than doing none. Now, this study is saying as little as 10 minutes can be beneficial for your mental health. 10 minutes can be as simple as walking to the bus stop if you're taking public transport, or parking at the shops and looking for the furthest possible car park. It could be literally going for a 10-minute jog around the block. If you don't like walking or jogging, you might like to get a bike or go swimming. It is important to do exercise that you enjoy, because if you enjoy it, you're more likely to do it. And if you do it, you're more likely to get the benefit from it. Once more, often these ideas in health are made harder or more complicated than they need to be. We can find, literally less than an hour a week to do some exercise. And again, if you can do more, that's better. There's a point probably where it does become too much, but most people aren't at that point of the spectrum. But if we can find some time, ideally daily or at least every other day, to be physically active in some way, shape, or form, then that's going to be good for our physical health and our mental health, and we'll feel better and we'll have more energy. Thanks for listening to Dr. Joe Unplugged. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, like, and share. You can also follow it on all the socials. There'll be new content uploaded each week.